At Magoosh, we've had the honor of getting to know students from many different backgrounds. Although we as a company focus primarily on leveling the playing field for test prep, we know that students are so much more than just a test score. This summer, we're amplifying student voices and highlighting the great work that student activists do all across the country. Make sure to subscribe to hear their inspirational stories as part of our Magoosh Student Voices video series. Hi everyone, I'm super excited today to be talking with Seika. Seika is a student activist who will be sharing a little more with us about her story and where she's headed next. So happy to have you with us, Seika.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, but honestly.
We're all here these days.
Absolutely.
Great. Well,
absolutely.
It would be great to just get to know you a little bit better. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So my name's Seika Brown, as we said, and I live up in Seattle, Washington. I'm just graduated my senior year of high school, so I'm heading up to Cornell up in Ithaca for my fall semester as a freshman. And that's kind of like a little overview.
Congratulations on
Thank you
graduating
so
and also getting to Cornell. That's a big achievement.
Honestly, I'm still shocked. It doesn't hit me really until like I start doing all my scheduling and I'm like, oh my, like, am I sure I should be here? But it's such a crazy process.
Yes, and especially with this year, what was it like graduating kind of during this crazy year with the pandemic and everything going on?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, like, I feel like every kid who graduated this year, whether like no matter like what grade you're in, it's just it's sad, but also really like community based. Because my school, at least personally, they did a lot of effort to try to do the best they can to give us that kind of senior year, end of the year kind of thing. It was a bit sad to watch a YouTube live of clicking through presentations on PowerPoint of each graduate at my high school. So it's definitely not what we expected, to have, but obviously I'm still really grateful, but it was definitely a little sad to see it all, but I'm still glad because I was able to still sit with my family and, text my friends, congrats. So I think we did the best we could.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of kids feel the same way this year, that kind of we're all doing the best that we can, kind of despite the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about student activism. What does student activism mean to you, and how did you know that you were an activist?
Yeah, honestly, it's a crazy kind of story. So back in my sophomore year of high school, I was like 15 and I was taking a sophomore psychology class. So it's a very basic introductory course. And for the final of that semester class, my teacher assigned my group of kids, like, you have to find an issue, like a problem in the high school, and then come up with a solution to address that issue and then present it in front of like our high school administration. And, it was really like up to you whether it wanted to be a joke or if it wanted to be serious. And I thought it was a really like good opportunity to like try to nail something down in my school. Like some kids did it on toilet covers, and I mean, honestly, go you in that case. Like they did it, like they did a great job, they got that A. But I focused it on around mental health and like the climate around mental health as a student, especially in the competitive high school that I go to. It was very competitive, and I was honestly struggling in classes. And when I say struggling, I don't mean like I got a 90%, I'm a failure. I mean like I was genuinely failing like my math class, like getting D+ in my chemistry class. So, and that was taking a toll on my mental health. And so I wanted to address the poor climate of mental health in my school. And so I kind of just focused my psychology project around that, presented it to my school. And then I was hoping that they would, reciprocate that and kind of pick up my idea, which was basically just to have a mental health club, just talking about resources and awareness. But down the line after the presentation, the school was kind of hesitant to have a mental health club because of some things that happened in the past. And I was like, well, I kind of already formed a team. I already had other kids who was interested in being in the club. And now my school said no. And I felt like I did all this work the past, few months, because the entire psychology course was focused around that like topic that you would choose. And so I was like, I have all this and I worked so hard and it didn't really go anywhere. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep up with it. So I took it outside of my high school, and then I made it a youth organization. And so my team and I kind of focused away from mental health, clubs at schools to more mental health policy change. We were like, well, if the school doesn't want my help, I'm going to make them get my help, was kind of what my 15-year-old self was going for. And so my team and I were called Arc Nova, which is two Latin and Greek words combined, meaning new beginnings. And kind of cliche, again, I was 15, I'm 18 now. So it's definitely kind of cliche, but we wanted to kind of start something. And it was like a 3-year process, obviously, to go through the entire billing and legislation. Back in 2019, so last year, my team and I actually got a bill passed in the Washington State Legislature. And it was around having like mental health, like youth kids, youth boys at each district in Washington State. And they're able to kind of be those navigators in what mental health looks like for each generational wave. Because, yeah. And so honestly, to answer the second part of the question, like, how did I realize I was an activist? I honestly didn't. Like, the things I saw wasn't because, I don't know, I was always been scared of like those labels in a sense. Activism, especially like nowadays, you see a lot of people trying to become activists and become social activists, which is a very good thing. But a lot of times people become social activists to get that title. And I was kind of wary of getting that title, especially coming into an adult sense. But yeah, I mean, I kind of embraced my role as an activist this past senior, end of junior year, especially getting ready for the college app season. Because like when they started asking me, what have I done? I was like, maybe now's a good time to call myself an activist. But no, genuinely, like I think after, sitting down with other kids, meeting other adults, I realized the impact of what an activist means. And then I kind of realized that's a label to embrace. So that's kind of a quick little summary.
That's an amazing story. So it sounds like you went from essentially a class project, and then you found other kids who were also really passionate about it, to a real blocker of the school not kind of helping to push it forward, to then new beginnings of something, literally, of bringing it outside of the school. And go you, all of you, for getting that bill passed. That's totally amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So what would you say to another 15-year-old who maybe does want to be an activist, but doesn't know like what cause are they passionate about? How would you, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I always think about this, like, especially like reflecting with college apps and now going into college, the process that I've been through to become where I am now. And I think every kid growing up, like, especially in our generation where it's like you are raised with, superheroes and like, these protagonists that are doing amazing things for their community, you're like, I feel like I have a need, especially in today's climate. I need to do something for my community. I need to do something for my country, for my world, etc. And so I think every single kid has that want to help people. I think that goes for any person in general. And I think the reason I chose mental health was because I saw mental health as such a foundational like point in a person, that mental health is, for me, was always like in the mindset that people have. And I was like, if we all have terrible mindsets, we can't ever work on these other social causes. And I think I wanted to go into environmental activism in the very beginning. But then like, you kind of had to reassess like your, what you have strengths in, what are you really good at, and kind of like that same thing you would do for a job, for a degree, for a class, asking those kind of same questions. But I think one, if you don't know what like cause to pick, there's so many, and no one's saying you can't do them all, and no one says they don't crisscross, because in my work of being a mental health activist, I became an activist for everything else too. I became an activist for social justice. I became an activist for climate change. I became an activist for so many other political and non-political issues. And I think oftentimes kids, even myself, like you get so stuck in the idea of like, I need to pick something. Again, whether that be a class or a degree or a major, whatever, like you get so stuck in the idea that you have to choose something. Rather, again, I think it's just better just to put your foot in it. Just go for it. If you have a phone, and if you have an Instagram, if you have a Snapchat, if you have a Twitter, if you have those resources, use them. Even though I mentioned becoming a social activist is becoming a label that people are seeing in a negative spotlight, that doesn't mean you will be a negative spotlight. You can be that positive spotlight people need. And I think social media activism is a great thing. And even posting on your Instagram stories, making a page where you just want to talk about activism, that's such a popular thing to do. And that's such a great thing to do. And that's a great place to start. And again, it's kind of like assessing your interests. Like if you always cared about animals, maybe you do want to do environmental activism. Maybe you always cared about people. Maybe you want to do mental health activism. And again, like these labels, these intersectional pieces, like really kind of crisscross. So you don't ever have to pick one thing. It's kind of something that you always get to pick and choose. Like it's a very flexible place to work.
Great. I love that. It sounds like really anybody who does care deeply about a topic has the power from their mobile devices these days to do something or to start. So you mentioned that you did start embracing the term activism when college app season rolled around. Can you share a little bit about how you talked about your activism in your college applications? And also, do you think that was kind of a key that helped the admissions committees learn more about you?
Yeah, I think I have like really two answers for this. I mentioned previously that in my sophomore year of high school, when I did my psychology project, I was struggling with grades and in my school. And back in sophomore year of high school, I actually failed my Algebra 2 class. When I say failed, I got like a less than like a 50%. So I got an F. And I had to take it again. I had to redo the course over the summer to get that makeup credit. And so going through my high school years, knowing that I had like this fail on my transcript, I was like, wow, I'm not going to be able to go into any good school. I'm not going to be able to go into, I really didn't even think I could get into a community college at that point. I genuinely felt that the grades that I had was such a stopper in my future. And which became a blessing in disguise, because I saw that my grades were already low, so I might as well focus on something else, which became my activism. But I would say that I improved my grades, obviously, and I built up my own self. I think when I came to the college admission process, I didn't even apply to Cornell. Cornell wasn't even in my hindsight. I did apply, obviously, but it wasn't my top school. I had other top schools, and they were very less than Cornell's like prestigious level of an Ivy League. I definitely kind of had to reflect. And so when I started putting down activism and the work I've done, it's because like that's what embodied my education. That was the story that I got to tell. And it was a really hard thing to pick and choose. I think when it comes down to college apps, like you don't know what story you want to tell. You don't know what's too personal or what's not personal enough. Mm-hmm. You don't know these kind of things, and you're always hesitant. And I think what really was the deal breaker for me, especially with Cornell, and I feel like this is what the admissions counselors probably read, was that I just wanted to be genuine. I couldn't tell my high school experience. I couldn't tell my grades. I couldn't tell anything without mentioning my activism. And there was a point where I didn't want to mention my activism because I was worried that because of mentioning my activism, I'd be using my activism as, a cover up for the failing classes that I had. And so what I really did was kind of like, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take away from what my counselors kind of told me about my college essays. And I kind of went the opposite direction. And I just wanted to be genuine. And being genuine in my college essays, being genuine in my college apps, being genuine in my answers, my interviews was the one thing that really drove me. I feel like as an individual, rather than someone confirming, like going to every kind of aspect. So I think the biggest thing was being genuine into who I was, what my experience was. And I talked about how I failed. I embraced my failure. And I think that was the key point of kind of not sugarcoating anything. I told them I failed. I told them I got over it. I told them I succeeded. And I think that was the kind of story that I wanted to tell.
That's wonderful. I think that's great advice for anybody applying for college or a job or really anything, is being genuine and being honest and transparent about your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously this Arc Nova has been a huge part of your life for the last 3 years. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you balanced that with your continuing schoolwork and everything on your plate.
It was hard. It was really hard. And again, coming from my sophomore year experience of genuinely failing a class and kind of going through family and friends, like as any kid would in high school, it was really hard because I wasn't like a good student. I didn't have these disciplines. I didn't have the dedication and the determination to do this organization. But I think I saw this as such a great opportunity. Like I saw myself failing in every aspect that I was doing, especially education-wise. And I kind of wanted to give myself a win. I wanted to give myself a success. I wanted not to just do it for myself, but do it for other kids who felt like in their mental health climate, like they aren't able to succeed in school. But the balance of it for the past 3 years has been remarkably hard. I think the peak of my organization was my junior year of high school. And that had me going in and out of classes. I had meetings at like in the middle of the day, when I would have a test or when I would have a project, etc. Like I would be leaving school for meetings, I would have events, and somehow I really balanced it. And I think the things that really worked for me, and it comes down to, again, your mindset and your psychology as a person, is that every day I woke up, I wrote down my values. Every day I woke up, I wrote down my priorities. And it kind of reminded myself of what really mattered, why am I doing this? And asking those questions to me every morning. So as I go out through my day, this is in my mind and I know what to prioritize. I also knew that I was a kid, that if I spent so much time working now, where would my time go as like a student, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister? Where would that time go if I'm just working all the time? So it was hard to balance, but I think it was the act of me asking questions about myself and about my work and kind of giving myself the best I can to the things I care about. And that also includes myself. So it comes down to mental health, truly. It was giving myself to my friends and giving myself to my family, giving myself to my school, to my work, but also giving time for myself. So whether that be waking up at 5 in the morning and kind of taking the morning to slow down, like I would wake up early, but I wouldn't do anything. I would wake up early, but like kind of like have a slow rise through the day, a calm like peace. And that moment that you take for yourself is going to be such a key thing you do in life, because if you don't take time for yourself, in reality, what's going to happen is like you're going to burn out, and burnout is something that's big in anything you do in life. It's huge, and it's a very real thing. And I've definitely experienced burnout. So kind of just taking time for myself in the day and asking myself these questions, knowing what I valued, knowing what I prioritized, and kind of activating that in my life.
Great. I'm curious if you have had other students or people that you look to as role models for your activism, or even these habits that you've formed of writing down your values and your priorities. Who inspires you? What inspires you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it comes down to my friends and my brother. My friends are great people, and honestly, back to the last question, they were the people who made sure I made time for myself. They were like, we want you to hang out today. We really do. But if you need to take the day for yourself, take the day for yourself. And so I think my friends were such great people to push me to become a better person, to push me in the right direction. And the same thing with my brother, who's 4 years older than I am. He's 23, I think. And he's like a senior in college. And he was studying to go into the medical field. And now he's switching majors and eyesights. But my brother's definitely been someone who also disciplined himself and worked hard. He was someone who didn't do well in high school either. He didn't graduate on time, yet he still was pursuing the medical field, and he's doing great things. And he has like he's going to computer science, he's doing amazing things. And so like seeing someone with that own failure or success story, and then seeing that parallel in me was such a big motivator. And I think, again, like I said, my friends, I'm of faith as well. So like obviously my own faith and religion all definitely helped. But I think having those people in my life who always pushed me to the right direction have been such inspirations. And then like on the cliche level, like the people I look up to in a realistic like world where like, you would choose an actress or someone like that. Like the reason I wrote my values down every day was because I read a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And James Clear is a crazy, like kind of, I would say he was a modern philosopher. He's someone who really came down like to what kind of habits, what are habits, how do you build habits, etc. And so I read that book, and that's why I started writing down my values, because that's one of the things it said. But yeah, like I also had a mentor who he really helped me. His name was Jonathan, and he pushed me better. So I think, those are my good inspirations I carry with me.
Great. Do you have any advice for students who they are very passionate about a topic and they want to become activists? How do you get started and keep going?
Absolutely. It's definitely a hard thing to do, but it's definitely doable. And I think now is the time to do it. And I think that's the first thing. Know that now is the time to do it. Now, know that your actions now is really going to help you in the future, no matter where you are in your journey. Even if it gets tiring in the middle, know now is going to help you. And I think that was a big thing that I carried with me. And then two, it was a mindset, again, that I adapted and I picked up. And I think for the activists who are passionate about a topic and you're like, what do I do? how do I start? And I think it comes down to simply like reaching out to people in that field. Also like kind of researching on your own. The best way to be an activist is educating yourself more than what your school educates you. That's Googling, that's reading, that's doing all these cliche things, but that's what gets you ahead. That's what puts you different than everyone else. And so kind of like educating yourself as well. But when I say educating yourself, I don't say just mean educating yourself on your topic. Like if you're a climate change activist, not just about climate change, but how to be a good leader, how to be a good person, how to be this kind of what is balance, kind of asking these questions again, and reading up on that, like educating yourself on that. And again, in balancing, you kind of need to know yourself. You have to take the time for yourself, and you have to take the time to help yourself and help your friends and help your family. Like know that you are a student first, and that's why student activism is so big, is because it's a student. It's a student doing this effort. It's a student doing this work. So embrace being a student and then embrace being an activist, because that's why it's called student activism. That's why it's called youth activism, not activism youth. It's because you are a youth first. And I think, again, it comes down to being genuine. It's being that person. It's being you that really makes that difference, because if you weren't you, then your activism wouldn't be your activism. And so if you lose yourself in your work, and again, this goes with anything, but if you lose yourself in your work, then you lose that meaning. And so that's why I would say taking the time for yourself, even putting down your work for a day, letting one homework assignment slip won't do you bad. So obviously you don't want to make that a habit, but know when to take a break and don't be afraid to take one. I would say would be my best advice.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that definition of student activism, of being the student and educating yourself, and really taking all the information that is now available at our fingertips and making the most of that.
Absolutely.
So as you look towards college and Cornell, how do you think your activism is going to play a role as you start college?
That's definitely been, one of those questions I've been asking myself. And I had asked myself with my organization as well. My organization, we created a toolkit on how to be an activist and kind of covering these things. And going through that, I definitely thought about my future in going into college, because college activism and high school activism, I'm realizing it's very different, and it's a very different field. It's very similar, but it's also, you're much older once you go into college, even though you just graduated. It's definitely a different thing. And I see myself really kind of spending more time with the logistics of it. Back when I was when I was starting, when I was 15 and I started my activism, I was such a big dreamer, and I didn't understand policy. I didn't understand the government. I didn't understand public speaking and writing. And I think what college is really going to be for me is that education pinpoint, educating myself on all the laws, all the customs, all the cultures, the background that I didn't have the resource towards learning in high school, but now I have the resource towards in learning in college. And so I'm going to be spending a lot of time like learning and researching, and I'm excited to research in college. And honestly, in the future, I hope to write a book, do a few speeches continuously, and just kind of continue what I have, my activism path. I mentor a few kids with the project that also helped me start. And so I've been mentoring them and kind of helping, again, the younger generation speak up, because when I was 15 it was great. And it was great to be that 15-year-old to lead, but 15-year-olds today are doing a lot more than I did when I was 15, which is remarkable, which is so happy to see. So I think passing that torch down is going to be such a big focus as well.
That's fantastic to hear that you are mentoring students, and that more and more kids are coming along and saying, I want to share my voice and my education, my actions with the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So seeing that this kind of, all of your activism sparked from this psychology project, I'm curious to know, is psychology going to stay a part of your life, and how?
Yeah, I was planning to major in psychology, and that was kind of like what I wanted to do, but I'm actually majoring in urban and regional studies. And for those who don't know what that is, it's basically city planning, and it's kind of taking sociology and architecture and combining it into one. Again, I kind of see myself in a big picture, which is a lot like my 15-year-old self, where I still have such a big dream and the goals that I want to accomplish. But I see urban and regional studies as such a manifestation of what my activism and what activism is because the way that we have our cities, the way that we have our cultures is kind of based around that sociology aspect and how we build our buildings and where we put our cities. And I think it's interesting to see how environment affects people's health. And like urban and regional studies is such a intersectional degree, and so that's why I'm learning it, is because it covers psychology, it covers design and art and culture and the brain, and so it's kind of going into this intersection is what I was looking for, so I didn't have to limit myself. And so definitely recommend looking into if people don't know what degree to go to. It's definitely a very beautiful one to study, so that's what I'm going into.
Yeah, it sounds like it just mashes together a lot of different disciplines.
Yeah.
Is that degree something more unique to Cornell, and did that play a role in you choosing Cornell?
It actually didn't. It's a definitely, you don't hear about urban regional planning or city planning, or they call it urban studies sometimes. You don't really hear it a lot because you see such bigger degrees like architecture or engineering take that forefront of design. But it's actually a very versatile degree. I found, again, Cornell wasn't even on my list until 2 weeks before the deadline. That was, which is another story on its own. But yeah, I mean, Cornell ended up having it, and I'm lucky because that's when I looked at Cornell, it had the degree that I was looking for. It wasn't that I wanted to go to Cornell. It was that I wanted this degree. And I think it's a very versatile one. It's in state colleges, it's, you know, in big universities, and it's in any kind of place you want to go to. So I think it's definitely versatile, which I didn't expect, but I was glad to see.
That's great. Well, Seika, you've definitely piqued my interest. Can you tell the story about how Cornell came to you 2 weeks before the deadline?
Of course. So basically, like I said, even though I had all this activism stuff and had all these successes, I still didn't think that my sophomore year, like me failing, and my GPA was pretty low because of that year. I failed my math class, but I also had like B's and like C's in my other classes, and so the GPA tanked itself. And you know, once you get a tanked GPA, it's really, really hard to get brought back up. And junior year was kind of at that middle ground of, you know, between passing and like kind of getting those A's, and then senior year I ended up getting a better GPA. But yeah, so I didn't see myself being able to get into big colleges. Honestly, again, Ivy Leagues like Cornell, like these big schools weren't even in my mind. Like I took the SAT once. I didn't really see myself going to such a big school. I didn't see the need for it. I applied in state. I applied for smaller schools across the US. And then my brother's girlfriend's, this is an interesting section, but my brother's girlfriend's dad told me at dinner once, and he asked me like, where are you applying? And I told him. And then he's like, aren't you doing all those big things outside of school? Like, why are you limiting yourself? And he said it to me like this, because he's a very business guy. He runs his own business. He said, why are you leaving money on the table? And I really took that with myself. Like, why am I leaving money on the table? Like, what does that mean? And I realized it's because I'm worth a lot more. And I think that was the thing that he was going for. It was that I had such a big, you know, play I could just put on the plate, and I didn't realize. And he told me to look at different schools. He's like, look at Rice, look at Brown, look at Cornell. And he gave me these names to look at. And out of all the other schools he told me to look at, I thought Cornell was the best fit. And I applied early decision. That was 2 weeks. I had the dinner 2 weeks before. I made my decision a week before the deadline. I frantically wrote my essay, sent it to a few teachers, and I went for it. And come December 12th, the early decisions came out, and I got in. And so it's been crazy. It's a crazy story to tell. And I'm actually doing a summer program with them right now. I'm taking like 2 classes for more credits right now. And so it's definitely really fun, but it's a story, and it's definitely something I didn't expect.
I love that advice. Just why are you leaving money on the table? Your value is so much more than you think. And
yeah, it was amazing.
I think that's just great for, you know, any student to keep that in mind. I know that, you know, sometimes college applications can feel so much like, you know, a one-way decision. I'm just presenting myself and you choose me or you don't. But really, we all have value to give, and it's about kind of shaping that value and bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any parting tips for any Cornell hopefuls or any students that are applying to colleges, especially given, you know, this year and how the pandemic has really affected us all?
For sure. I would say one, to the Cornell hopefuls. After I got in, I told a teacher of mine, obviously very excited, and he said, did you look at the swimming requirement? So for all those Cornell hopefuls, you have a swimming requirement that I didn't know we had. It gets very easy, but apparently you have to do this kind of like swimming requirement. It's part of your graduation. You can do it anytime, any day. Just look at that. If, it shouldn't be your deal breaker. You can opt out of it, but I just didn't know. So definitely look into that. But again, for everyone else, even Cornell hopefuls, it doesn't matter who you're or like what school you're looking at or what you think you can and can't do. Realize your value and realize your worth. And again, be genuine. Be straight up. Be honest. You don't have to hide from your mistakes. You don't have to hide from the things that you're scared of. And the moment you embrace that, the moment you put that onto paper and you show that to your admissions officers and they're able to see that, like, you are going to be that person that sticks out. And there are billions of applicants. And so if you spend more time being genuine, you spend more time being you and using your language in your essays, and the school that chooses you is going to be the school that's right for you because it's the one you were most genuine with. So I would say be genuine, take breaks, and do your best because honestly, you have so much more education in front of you. You have so much more in front of you. College is a great thing, but it's not it. It's the future, but it's not going to be it for you. So don't think you're going to peak there. And it's definitely something it's going to help, but just be genuine.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Seika. You're an inspiration. And
thank you.
We wish you all the best going into Cornell and can't wait to see
Thank you so much.
what comes next.
Of course.